Okay, very good afternoon, everybody, and such a pleasure to be back again with our tea and tales, and obviously our cup of tea has to be there, and friends. And this time, I have very, very special friends for you. I have Easter and I have Sabia. They are amazing people. I can tell that to you. I've been lucky to be knowing them for quite some time. Easter, a Spaniard who moves to India for an MBA in ISB, and then she obviously worked in HR departments across like TCS or HP, but then she sets up her own magazine first, and then in the HR fraternity, she sets up a huge community and is able to collect amazing leaders and established her magazine so powerful that I think this is the best HR magazine that we have in the country. And the kind of get together she's able to organize and the leaders, I get amazed. I've been on her events every year. I make it a point to go there, and every time I return back more amazed. I get to see a lady so powerful who's able to handle so many things at such meticulous speed. It's amazing. Sabia is again from a human perspective. I yet to meet a better human being than Sabia. No, I think whenever I go to Munich, whenever no, I meet her, I feel so happy, so delighted from the soul itself. No, it's such a delightful feeling to have. She has worked with so many leaders across in US, in Europe. I think her point of view is always very strong, very clear in what she has to say, and she in her thought process is amazing. So getting these two ladies together to talk about leadership aspirations and have conversation in general and hear stories is going to be very, very interesting. I'm super excited today for this event. So we start, let's say, with Sabia, no, from your perspective. So today, I think broadly we're trying to see if we talk about leadership, their frustration, the youth, their frustration, and how do they look to become good leaders. No, so those are the broad conversations. But any story from your side, anything which can bring out something about different leaders or something funny that you saw, or how did you see leadership emerge? And some very powerful leaders that you have seen, you may not name them, but what you thought when you're close to them that no, what is that one thing that made them powerful? Their frustrations, their lows, their highs, something of that side. No, Sabir, I think you have such a lot of experience meeting so many leaders. Very interesting to hear from you as to know what people think and how they look at leadership.
So I think it's a very broad question, very interesting one. I've seen a variety of leaders. The ones that have been the best leaders are the ones who know who they are. And it sounds like a simple question, but it isn't. A lot of leaders, while they're so busy getting ahead in the organization or wherever they are, really forget to be in touch with who they actually are. They are constantly adjusting and managing other people's expectation. And sometimes in that, they get lost. So, and the other thing I would say is good leaders are also leaders who can wing it. And I just recently told this story to my team. I was working in Washington and I had to go to New York for a meeting. And in the morning, I got a fax from a colleague in Munich saying, could you please kindly swing by Columbia University because Jeffrey Sachs, the famous professor, is holding a conference. And he is giving a press conference, and a couple of companies have signed a declaration, and we as Allianz have signed that declaration too on climate. Could you please go to that press conference? You don't have to do anything, just collect a few name cards and show some presents. So I said, okay, perfect. I asked him, why did we sign the declaration as Allianz? And he said, well, we did because Swiss Re did, Munich Re did, we didn't want to lose out. So anyway, I really didn't know what the conference was about, but I thought I'll figure it out when I go there. When I arrived, the room was crowded. There were cameras everywhere because Jeffrey Sachs is quite famous. And what happened is that when I arrived, they said there's only overflow room. But then I gave my name and I said, I'm from Allianz. And they said, oh, we've been waiting for you. No, we have a special seat for you on the panel next to Professor Sachs. And I almost died because I didn't know what this conference was about. I had no idea. I thought I'm going to kill this colleague. And to make a long story short, I even had to say a few words in a press conference. And all I can say is my heart was pounding. I could hear it here because I didn't know what I was going to say. So I quickly picked something together, about green products and so on and so forth that I could remember and had a short narrative. So my leadership lesson there is you sometimes just got to go with the flow. And if you're a good storyteller, it's very helpful, and don't fret it because the news flows are so fast today. People, will see and not remember, but it's important to not take things too seriously sometimes in life. So, that's my two things.
Yeah, that's a very interesting lesson, Sabia, and you'll be, no, I think, surprised to know that for me it happens nearly every day. From one meeting to another, suddenly my ear is giving me a two-sheet of paper, and I'm entering. I said, "What's this?" Well, I'm entering a press conference now. I said, "What press conference? You didn't tell me earlier." No, no, we busy here. Just read it on the way, and no, you just enter and you get into it.
Yes.
And the heart is always here. I think what you said is right. I think quite a lot of times I forget where the heart is supposed to be. I think you end up there, and you have to be very, very clear about what you're talking about. You can't make a
Yes.
mistake. But that is it, and that is where I think the point you mentioned: leaders that tend to lose themselves as human beings. I think they're
Yes.
living so many roles, they forget who they are. I think a very good leader will be one who remains who he is at all points of time, natural,
Yes.
genuine, no, and the way it is, like take it, leave it types, and they would make a huge difference. The facade does not make a difference. I think beautiful, Sabia. Easter, you would do so good. HR, come to India, ISB, and then how did you think of setting a magazine, People Matters, and then in such a
Mm.
short time, made it the magazine of India for HR, not only India, now I think Asia. Last I heard you had a conference, Singapore, and when I enter your conference, every year it gets more and more powerful. And I've seen you like clockwork, like by the second I can time you that Easter will be here now. Like no, I've never seen anybody so perfect in the timing. Meet so many leaders and so many HR professionals. How do you do all this, Easter? And what are your some interesting no stories that you it's on the top of the mind recall about what has happened in different times or the thinking of this, no? Anything that you want to speak about?
Thank you. Thanks, Tapan. And it's a pleasure to be in this panel with Sabia and with all of you. So it's interesting because when you're asking that question and you're defining People Matters, and I look at People Matters business today, and it's changed so much. So what you're describing in terms of, our physical events and our magazine, and
Mm.
that's something that belongs to the past. And the past is just,
Mhm.
11 weeks back.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that have helped us being successful is always asking the question, what business we are in, and always stay very true to the answer. What is the value that you bring uh, to this world? That if your organization ceases to exist, if you are not there as an individual, what's the vacuum that you leave?
Mhm.
What is it you really bring to your team, or you bring to your organization, or in this case as a brand? What is it that you bring to this world that makes such a big impact, right? So when you're describing us as a physical event conference, and we do that really well, but now we can't do physical conferences anymore. So we had
Mhm.
to go back to that core of, we are not about conferences. We are about bringing leaders together who are passionate about people and who need to find answers. So if you look at what's happening with the pandemic, it actually is so needed, right? We need to come together and figure it out. Tapan, as we were discussing before the session went live, how are we helping our teams? How do we keep them safe? How do we
Mhm.
motivate them? How do we engage them? And there's so many questions, and there are no answers to that. And I think that's where the opportunities lie, when you're able to capture a need from either your team or your colleagues or your company or the community at large, and actually say, I'm going to take charge of that. And that's what's made People Matters successful. Just really identify, how are we adding value to the world? And we used to do that with the print magazine, then we used to do that with large conferences. Now we do it with our own technology platform, which we have built in just 12 weeks. Because at the end of the day, that's what leadership is all about. Leadership is about creating impact, regardless of the obstacles. You need to overcome those obstacles.
Did we hear this? What she said is about creating impact. It's about identifying what problems are there and how do you solve it. And you heard her how she has transformed herself and her company so rapidly. No, I've seen the past two that she mentioned. The future I have to see what she's building now. So maybe in August again, I think I'm part of one of her events. I'll be watching that. It's amazing as an individual, how many times you get frustrated if things don't work out? How many times you
Mhm.
feel that the world is not the place for us? How many times you feel let down? Have we recalibrated or redesigned a thinking to think, okay, fair enough, I may have lost everything, I have nothing to do, I may not be good, whatever mind may be playing on. But can we think, okay, what is that one problem that I can contribute to try to solve, or at least bring the discussions to the table which can make a difference to the world or to my family or to the society or to my neighbor or to any individual? Can I just make somebody smile? I think we start like that. We're on the path of optimism. We're on the path of making a difference, and that is where I think the leadership starts coming into play. I think beautifully put, Taster. Sabia, you are the master storyteller that I know. So, any story that you would talk about from leadership or something, which you found very interesting and was a huge learning for you. I think you had so many experiences in your life. Interesting to hear any story that you would like to speak about.
I think one of the things is we have to define what success means new as a company, right? It's not only about financials. It's not been about financials for a long time, but the crisis has shown us that there's a wider society that big corporations especially have responsibility for. But even as individuals, what is success? I know that a lot of young people look at celebrities and so on and think, they want to be like those, want to have a lot of money, they want to be able to buy big things and so on and so forth. But I think in our world, we need to define now what success is. And success a lot of times is, as a Jewish old man put it in New York, I heard him once say, who's going to hide me? And he was talking about the Holocaust. Do I have friends who are willing to risk their lives to hide me? Do we have a community? Do we have a friend who we can, rely on, and a community that can support us? And especially in the pandemic, it became clear that we are nothing without our communities, our neighborhoods. And I think that's something, if you look on your life, it's important to define as a young person, what does success look like for me beyond money? Because money and a big job and titles and a big office, they might not play a role going forward. So I think community service is a big thing that I would say young people, especially these days, if they have nothing to do, they should look around. Where can they add value and what can they do? And I think the second thing I would say is, especially for young people, it's important to stay current. So listen to podcasts, read articles, reflect. The one thing I tell my kids to do, and I've been doing for 30 years, is I write a diary every morning. Every morning I sit down and I write a diary. How am I feeling today? What are my thoughts? What am I anxious about? What are my plans for the future? What is hindering me today? What can I accomplish? Is there a friend who needs a good word? As you said, is there somebody I need to make to put a smile on their face? Do I need to call my mom, or do I need to call one of my siblings? I think those are the things that are important. And when you are working from home or working remotely, or you feel the pressure, those things can get lost. But I think sorting your thoughts in the morning is a very good discipline, and it's a good leadership discipline, but it's a discipline also for young people. So I think it's important that you write a diary to capture your thoughts. And as the years go by, you can look back. I oftentimes, when I'm discouraged, I take one of my old diaries and I'll just randomly open a page and I'll go, wow, I remember that. And isn't that amazing how small things look from a perspective of 5 years ago? And what we did with maybe about leadership with my team, what we did a couple of years ago, we wrote ourselves letter to the future. So 5 years ago, we wrote ourselves letters and we said, if we as a team have been successful, these are the things that we will have achieved. And if we were not successful, these are probably the things that would have kept us. And we just recently re-looked at those letters, and it was amazing how much truth we had 5 years ago. And because we had written the letters to ourselves in the future, it gave us focus. So I think writing does something with your brain. It helps you focus. It's so important. And it's physical writing. Don't write on your devices. Take a physical book and write things down. I think it's amazing what you can learn from your own life, because your own life is the deepest source of encouragement for yourself.
Wonderful, Sabia. I think let me first start with the success story that you said. It made me smile so much. You know why? So when I was in college and then I was just getting out of it, I had a motorcycle, which I don't know if you know, it was called Java in those days, Java, ESD. So in those days, you just had that motorcycle. I had to see these big cars and I would think one day I'll have a big car, And I would see, that this would be, I think one day if I get married, I'll be very happy. I'll have kids and I'll have a big car, I'll have a big house, I'll be very successful. And this is not so, like every youth, and I drive by and look at some big fancy cars, stop at showrooms. I couldn't afford, I couldn't dare to enter. I remember I entered a Mercedes showroom way back, and the salespeople looked at me and I thought I'll disappear. I think the aura of those big cars and all. I see, wow, man, this is how you have to be successful. And then after, by God's grace, I could achieve quite a bit of it. And then one day when Java was relaunched, I went to the daughter to buy Java again, the motorcycle. And I was laughing to myself. And daughter asked me, why are you laughing so much? I said, how stupid I have been. At the end of the day, I still crave for my Java. I still crave for just riding, okay, being carefree. I think all that I thought about it as my definition of success was all bullshit. At the end of it, it didn't really work out the way it was. Making people smile, making a difference in people's life, contribute to society is what gives me more happiness, not those cars, not the houses. No, but I think people have to go through their own journey to realize that. That is also one thing which is very critical. I think going through journey is critical, but just a perspective that after going through and buying the Java again, and that day I laughed so much, and my daughter was so surprised. Why are you laughing? I said, how stupid things are in life when you realize that.
Yeah.
And coming to your diary point, when you look back, the anxieties you put forward as the anxieties of your life at that one time, and just after about 6 months or 1 year look back, you laugh at the anxieties that seriously, these were the anxieties of my life, and I was killing myself for this. No, it was so stupid. No, I think on hindsight, you look back, life is just about making a difference to somebody. Contributing something, like I think Ester said, be it society, be it people, or be it in an individual. If you do that well, you got it right. So, and writing diary, I start again. I forgot. The only problem is writing. I don't know if I can read my own writing after 2 days. So we'll try that again. Any story from your side, about some interesting people? I've met so many interesting people across, I think, So in that stuck onto you as some learning, something which you felt hugely different.
So it's beautiful to hear both the stories, and I think it goes back to your point, Sabia, about knowing yourself. And that discovery of knowing yourself actually gets accelerated when you go through challenges. Because you will see many people who are very fortunate to have lives which are very well structured, and maybe they not have to really overcome a lot of challenges. And I think that's, really fortunate for them. But then they don't, they really struggle because challenges will come in our lives. In many ways, it's inevitable. So for many of us who are, watching this conversation, if you're struggling, you're going through challenges, embrace them because you're growing, you're learning.
Yes.
And Sabia, you gave that silver lining that in few months, they actually look very small. And Tapan, you also share your beautiful example. And I'm remembering when I came to India in 2004, many, many years ago, I'm originally from Spain, so many of you would know that Southern European countries are not very good in English speaking. So I couldn't speak very good English. And that too, I joined ISB, which is, of course, a premium school with, the most brightest minds from around the world and from India. In 2004, that was a third batch. And I joined into this group of extremely smart, very, very analytical colleagues. Everyone was either from IIT or, whichever. And I couldn't speak English very well. I did not understand anything about what was going on. And all the subjects were really technical, whether it's, microeconomics or macroeconomics or statistics. And I left maths probably when I was 13 years old. So I've always been an arts person. So an arts person who doesn't speak English into a highly analytical, mathematical driven course, you can imagine the combination. It was maybe one of the most difficult things that I've ever had to do. So much so that I actually at some point thought that maybe I will not be able to make it. Maybe I'll not be able to succeed. But I had come all the way to India. I had spent all my investments that I had earned over so many years. And I had this doubt that maybe I can't do this. And that doubt stayed for a little bit. And then I realized that, I'm already here. I'm in Hyderabad and there is no going back. I have to figure out. And I remember going to the teaching assistant saying that, listen, I'm not able to follow what's happening in class. The teaching assistants will be, but, what's the problem? And I'll be like, yeah, but why are we doing, why are we doing distribution? How is that meaningful? What does that mean? What is Z value means? Why is that relevant to me? And I remember the teaching assistants looking at me saying, what is this woman asking? Because my questions were all about, why are we doing this? how is this going to be important for business? How is this going to connect? And nobody could answer those questions because, most of the times the education system is built in such a way that you just need to get to the number. Whether you understand the number or what that number means, whether it's a good number or a bad number, that we won't get into, right? So that was the journey when I started to realize that even though I was struggling, there was something different about what I was bringing to the table. So I think that story is for all of us to reflect. You may be struggling, but you need to find out of that struggle, what is the one thing that you are actually unique? So my uniqueness was about asking questions. So suddenly people started to want to study with me because I would be this crazy person who will ask questions saying that, okay, if we're doing a marketing project and this is the pricing of this product, I'll say, but is this a good pricing? Will people be able to afford it? Is this going to work? What is the comparable pricings? And everyone in my team will be like, but this is the right number. The formula said so. But I'll be like, yeah, but this doesn't make sense to me. So I think in those struggles, if you don't give up, then you will realize that there is something that you bring which is unique. And that's the journey of self-discovery that you both were talking about. In my case, it was a slap in the face because I really felt I would fail. And suddenly I took a full circle and realized that I was actually bringing something very diverse and very unique to the conversation. Sorry, you were going to say something to add
I was
to that.
going to say, building on your uniqueness, something that I've recently discovered is that it's so important to know your ancestry, because a lot of times your uniqueness is hardwired into your DNA. So, I, for example, realized that both of my parents, and my mother is German and my dad is Indian, they were refugee families. My mother's family, they lived in Silesia, which is now Poland, had to flee the Russians during World War II. And my dad from Aligarh, the family from Aligarh, they were Muslims, they fled to Pakistan, parts of the family. So, I realized that I come from a heritage of basically people who had to start afresh. They were not afraid to embrace the new. They were very sophisticated because, they had to, they had friends that they had to leave behind. They had to keep an optimistic outlook on life. And they went through challenges, but they were always moving forward. So with it came resilience. And so my outlook on life is very much connected to that. I've moved probably 15 times during my life. It's easy for me to embrace change. And that's maybe unique, but it's unique because my ancestors already did that and brought that perspective. So, when you're writing your diary, one thing that I've also done is I've written down the stories. And if you are finding as a young person nothing to do, I encourage you to go and talk to your grandmother, your granduncle, your uncles and aunts. The Indians are very good in storytelling. They have a storytelling tradition. Find out your family's stories because I bet you will realize patterns in you and your kids that you never thought came from your ancestry, but they did. And their experiences shape you. I come from a lineage of very strong women. My grandmother, my Indian grandmother, she was married when she was 14 years old. She had to, she didn't go to school then anymore. She had 5 kids, started her first child when she was 15. She got her degree later on. She learned Farsi. She studied philosophy. She did that. She was a very, very, woman who was into knowledge and education. My grandmother on the German side, she made a life for herself without her husband. So those are women. I come from a strong lineage, and I think understanding the lineage that you come from is so important because that's part of who you are. You can take the good things and build on them because they are hardwired in you. And the bad things you forgive and you move on, because it's important to also look at those things, but to forgive them and move on. I think it's very important.
Unbelievable.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing, Sabia.
Sabia, seriously. And Ester, I think on your experience, I'm not an MBA and I run an insurance company as CEO. So I get this question many times that, you're not an MBA. They ask me, what do you think people different? I said, as a scientist, I'm eternally curious. That is what I think makes the difference. Like, be trained to just ask questions, I think, and be curious about everything and not be happy with whatever results are coming through. And on the question of the end result, I remember my younger daughter when she was in school and maths would be her exam. And on the way to school and dropping her early morning, I'd ask her some questions. And she would say, "You don't worry, Dad. I know the answer. I've learned it up completely. And I know the question. So don't worry, I'll do well." And I would be so scared. How can you get exam like this? And today is a computer engineer. No? So I think what you rightly said, I think if you are still positive in any circumstances, and like Sabia said, if you know are able to forgive, move on, no, and even with difficult times, be optimist,
Yeah.
have the resilience, and have the beauty of no, understanding life, understanding people, and having that heart for care. I think you're through with life. Rest is very easy to handle. I think, no, if you can do that and not get bogged down with how things are progressing. I think this is one conversation. And if I look at all the comments coming through, I think people are loving what you guys are putting together as stories, no? And we still have about 5-7 minutes left, no? Otherwise, I think the way it's going, we could go on forever. But I think you have to leave it at 35. One story from your side, the last story from you, and the last story of Sabia, and then we sum it up for everybody else. People don't want to stop. I think they're all excited with. I think I have to hold a big show with you guys. I think maybe half a day or something. Story from yours.
So,
I think.
yeah, I can share. I think during this lockdown, many of us who have children, or maybe you live with your parents, I think it's been also a time where, as families, we've come together. And I think again, this is a silver lining, because many of us were locked down in different countries. Some of us, like you, Sabia, you were locked down earlier, so you could kind
Yes.
of train us on how to do it. We got locked down later. But what I've experienced, I think, as an individual, as a mother, as a leader, is how we've come together. And I think the lockdown has changed how we look at life. And I think, Sabia, you were talking about forgiveness and prioritizing and what's important, what really matters. So for me, it's been a discovery of how much I love spending time with my children. I have a 13-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter. And both me and my husband are entrepreneurs. So just spending quality time with our children throughout the day, even though many times, I'll also lose my cool and my temper because I need some private time. But it's been a beautiful discovery journey for them. And I'm going to spend time on this lineage that you share about this. I don't think we speak enough about where we come from and what are the
Yes.
stories. Because if we're able to bring that even to our children, they may actually not have to go through maybe some of the challenges that we had to go through of self-discovery. So I'm personally really enjoying this spending time at home and discovering who my children are as people. And I'm really, really loving that.
And I told my team, building on you, Esther, that it's important they spend time with family, because our children are learning from us how we deal with crises. They are watching very, very carefully. So, the way you conduct yourself is such a life lesson for the kids, for the young ones who are living with us, because they're watching you. And I guess I want to maybe close with this, with one thing that also the pandemic has shown us. It's so important to stay grounded and to serve the poor. I think it's super important, no matter in what society you live, that you don't lose track of that, because the ultimate, we've heard about in the 80s and 90s the excesses at Wall Street, and I'll share a small story that I encountered, which was so incredible, but true. If you lose the grounding, what can happen? So we had a CEO of a subsidiary many years ago in New York, and we sold that part of the business, I can say now, so I can tell the story without names. But this was in New York-based company. And I was holding a meeting there with a couple of colleagues. And this building was very lavish. It was money management, so very lavish building. And the CEO was quite flamboyant. And when you entered that building, there was a large hallway over a couple of stories, and you could see the atrium. And from the atrium was hanging a huge chandelier. So as I was meeting with the team and finishing up the meeting, I asked to take a picture, on the staircase with the chandelier hanging down. So it was a very nice picture. And when I was doing that, the CEO at that time walked past, and he stopped to say hi to me. And he said, "Oh, Sabia, this is a really perfect place to take a picture. Guess what? I was recently interviewed by my alma mater and about the success that I've had. And I took a very cool picture. Do you want to guess what kind of picture I took?" And I said, "Well, you were probably either standing here or in your great office. And he said, no, much better. I'll give you a hint. I'm a climber. So I said, and I wanted to signify that I've climbed the heights of success. And I said to him, oh, let me think. Maybe you were in your climbing gear and you were climbing up someplace and people took a picture of you. And he said, you're almost there. I put climbing gear on and I hung myself from this chandelier to show the success that I have climbed. And I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. He really did that. It just shows you how educated people can completely lose their grounding if they don't look around and serve the needs of the people around them. This person had made a fool of himself by trying to signify the success that he had, achieved by hanging himself from the chandelier in his building. I mean, really, really, this is the craziest story that I've probably in my professional life, have seen. But it just shows you what's possible. It's so important to stay grounded in these times. And it's a new reminder during that pandemic to do that. Tapan, you asked for a story, so I had to tell this story.
No, but it's brilliant. Actually, it's a very powerful story, Sabia. I think, on a hindsight, yes, we feel that, that was pretty flamboyant of him. But when I look at leaders, quite a few leaders, pretty simple people, when they get power, they're not able to handle it. I think leadership, power should be grounding you more. It should make you more humbler. Your obsession about serving the society and people should increase at an exponential level.
Yes.
I think you can manage it well. If you don't do that, then it kills you. And if you look at history, and we have enough stories in history, very powerful people got killed just because they couldn't handle the power, no? And we go back, like you said, go back to lineage, go back to stories that you have, go back to mythology. Everywhere the same story.
Yes.
Because powerful, can't handle it, it's over.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I think the biggest lesson which I take from your story, Sabia, is the more powerful you become, the more obsessed you should be to make a difference at the ground level, to serve people, and to be completely obsessed with that. Then I think power helps you. Power, money helps you then. Otherwise, it's like fire. In large amounts, it kills you. In small amount, it serves you. Use it to serve you. Could you have had a better session with these two ladies here? I think I enjoyed every bit of it. I see most of you are saying have a session two. I know, guys, I want to continue forever. But Easter gave me a warning. I will leave at 4:35. Sabia told me under the weather. I will put the two ladies and let them go. I'll get them for you again. And we'll have a full half-day session now with stories, I think there's so many stories, so much to learn. I think for me, it's a huge learning. Thank you, Sabia, and thank you, Easter, my friends.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you,
Tapan.
Thank you so much.
Lovely meeting you, everyone.
Yes, great meeting you too. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Bye.